F&I Today with Russell Brown.
Hello everyone and welcome back to F&I Today, where we go inside the topics, trends, and best practices for today's F&I dealership personnel, only here on the CBT Automotive Network. I'm Russell Brown. A recent eLens Solutions survey of U.S. dealers indicated that 8 out of 10 stores believe that the time it takes to buy a car should take less than 2 hours. The reality, however, is that the average transaction time for a customer from meet and greet to funded is closer to 4 hours than the sought-after 2. And as Auto Trader's recent study pointed out, the longest process in the car buying experience happens in the business office, with F&I accounting for 61 minutes of an average transaction. In a recent article, eLens Solutions founder and CEO Pete McGinnis said dealers have expressed to him that the biggest opportunity for change is to capture more information from the customer earlier in the process. By providing an easy, seamless, and efficient F&I experience for their customers that starts online, this time can be trimmed down while customer satisfaction as well as dealership productivity will go up. So what's holding back this process from happening? McGinnis suggests that the dealership sales and F&I process has been built by dealers for dealers and not consumers. When we come back, Pete will join us here in the studio to kick off a multi-week series on creating a connected car buying experience that can improve your F&I processes and ultimately boost your profits. Pete McGinnis is joining us next, so don't go anywhere.
Hey guys, it's Bridget Everett and Russell Brown here of the CBT Automotive Network, and we are excited to welcome you to the all-new Service Drive today.
Yeah, and if you like what you've seen in CBT News and if you work in the fixed ops department, then Service Drive is for you. It's a one-stop destination for all of the news, insight, and in-depth interviews with industry leaders such as Jeff Cowan, Lee Harkins, and Don Reed, just to name a few.
Here on our daily newscast, we will feature insight on the hurdles facing today's service industry, like how to hire, recruit, and retain top techs and advisors, the new digital tools that you need to stay connected to today's customer, and dealership best practices, and so much more.
Along with a daily newscast from the CBT Automotive Headquarters, we also will bring you Service Drive Today magazine every single month.
That's right. Just like Car Biz Today magazine, Service Drive Today is free, and it takes you inside the need-to-know information to take your fixed ops to a whole new level of success.
So stay tuned to the CBT Automotive Network to drive more profits in your service department with Service Drive. Founder and CEO of eLens Solutions, Mr. Pete McGinnis, joining us now here on F&I Today. And we spoke to Pete on Monday over at CBT News. We highly recommend you see that conversation here. But Pete, we're going to dive into some more topics here today. But first of all, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you. It's been a while since you and I caught up before this week. One thing that you said recently is that the current dealership sales and finance process is built for dealers, but not for consumers. Talk about what you meant there.
What I meant by that is the current dealer process wasn't built today. It was built decades ago, right? And now we've got consumers, and we all know what's happened just over the last few years from the consumer shopping experience. So that's changed radically in terms of the expectations and the transparency and the information and starting where they want and stopping where they want and all of that. So when you look at that shopping experience, how radically it's changed, then you move to the in-store process, it's still the old process, right? And so the consumer expectations becomes a little disappointed in that, because they were hoping that that would continue when they got to the dealership. And so when you look at, I think it was an Auto Trader study just very recently, it was only like consumers surveyed, only 17 out of 4,002 consumers responded that only 17 of 4 actually like the process.
Right, isn't that something?
Yeah. So that, I think that speaks volumes. And I think that's what we're referring to. So when we talk about that, we're saying is how can we help the dealers in that process flow, and how can we help it with technology and help speed up some of that process and that communication between the consumer and the dealer in the dealership.
And that expectation is only changing too. Obviously, right now, as you said, the consumer mentality has definitely changed over the past couple of years, but it's only evolving at a more exponential rate, especially as Gen Y and millennials become into the market for the first time as shoppers. So how do dealerships go about changing the F&I process? Because, as you said, this is a process that's been in place for a long time now. How do they change to meet those expectations?
Well, I think what they do is they need to move the finance process forward earlier in the process with the consumer. And it really does start, again, shopping online, right? So I think there's been a reluctance for dealers to do that because they kind of fear that becoming a commodity and giving up that information, particularly when there's a lot of complexities to it, right? So they've been a little bit reluctant to it, but I think, when a consumer's shopping online and their shopping price, it's an expensive purchase. They also want to know what their payments are going to be. And they want to know what the real payments are, not just an estimator or a calculator or something of that lines. So I think that finance coming to that front of the process is going to be more responsive to the consumer. But at the same time, it's going to help that dealer engage with that consumer earlier, give them more information, but now they're going to learn more about the consumer and expectations and buying. I mean, they may decide now, well, this customer is looking at, the compact car. Now he can move up to the midsize because they can really qualify for that, right? So now they know exactly what they're dealing with, and it shifts that information pendulum back to the middle, so now the dealer knows as much as the consumer does. And that starts to build that real relationship.
Term that you used that I really liked a lot, and I think you really touched on it right there, is a connected car buying experience. Elaborate a little bit more on what exactly that is and walk us through the process of how a dealer can create that connected car buying experience.
Well, yeah, I think it goes, as I just stated, when you talk about the consumer's online expectations and then mirroring those in the in-store process. Right. But then even in the in-store process, it becomes a connection so that all the departments within the dealerships are connected. And using the transferring of information at the earliest stages all the way through the process. So that means that the internet department who generated the lead is in sync with the sales process, and the sales process is in sync with the finance, and they're all on the same page, all at the same time. Yeah. So instead of a start and stop, process at a time, they're really all involved together at the very beginning of the stage. And they're supporting each other with their expertise.
And let's talk about how that can be done, because as we've seen before here on CBT News, and we've talked about a lot, there's different departments within a dealership that haven't naturally worked well together a lot of times, whether it be sales and F&I, sales and service, whatever it may be. How does a dealership go about bringing that uniformity to all of their dealership employees to say, guys, we got to work together on this to create this better experience?
Well, I think all the studies and surveys are telling a dealer, if you improve that consumer experience, you're not going to sell the car for less. You're going to sell it for more. They're going to have a better experience. You're going to shorten the time. Everybody's going to be connected, and you're going to have a better consumer experience. You're going to increase your profitability, and you're going to get more referrals out of that. Right. So it's really important to that dealer to say, hey, how do we take that time from 3 to 4 hours? Can we get it down to 60 minutes and really improve that consumer experience? And if so, that's going to come back to us tenfold.
And let's talk about the time it takes in F&I right now, because with that research being done ahead of time, before a customer even comes onto the showroom floor for the first time, they're already at least aligned with the dealership's expectations when it comes to F&I. So with that in mind, how long should a consumer be in the business office? How long should they be in F&I finishing up that deal? Well,
again, some of those recent studies that we've all been seeing lately, it's had really interesting stuff. Yeah. So, I think it was Auto Traders, they had one that said 61 minutes in F&I, right? Yeah. When the consumer says, when I get over 90 minutes, I've now become disenchanted. Right? For the entire process. Yeah. So rather than 61 minutes in finance, the consumer's looking for 60 minutes total, right?
Yeah, right.
And I think we need to, how do you shorten that up in the finance department? It's by bringing finance up front. They start them online, start them when they get into the showroom. When a customer's qualifying that customer in the deal structure for payments, match it to actual real lender programs, final terms up front in the negotiation process. So then you're taking that portion of that, probably a third of that time out of the equation in the F&I department, right? So now you're taking a third of that 61 minutes out of the equation. It's more efficient in the sales department, and now the dealer can focus on the paperwork And there's a lot of that in
Yeah.
the aftermarket products.
Right, so definitely a great way to be able to get your consumers as happy as they can be, especially when it comes to F&I, trimming that time down from, as Pete said, about 60 minutes or so in F&I, possibly down to a third. One great way to do that is by bringing that connected buyer experience by having F&I done up front online. Well, when we talk next week to Pete, we're going to talk about the CFPB regulations and how a connected car buying experience when it comes to F&I could be a game changer to these regulations that may be coming down, so you don't want to miss out on that conversation. We're going to have that coming up next week. Well, Pete, we certainly appreciate the time, and we look forward to talking to you next time.
Thanks, Russell.
Thank you for watching today's edition of F&I Today with Russell Brown.